All right, the meaning of language. What do we really mean? When you know a language, you understand how the words go together. A word by itself can be meaningful. No, that has a meaning. Or it can be meaningless. Aardvarks. What do I mean by that? Sometimes a word has two meanings. Yeah, we get that in slang quite a bit. And we have two words that can have the same meaning, and we can have what words referred to in the real world or in our imagination. So, meaning of words is pretty broad. So, when a sentence is meaningful, makes sense, or meaningless, does not make sense. When a sentence has two meanings, or two sentences have the same meaning, or if a sentence is true or false, we're dealing with the truth conditions of a sentence. All of this is going to be broken down into the meaning of language, and we're going to use semantics, where we study the meanings of morphemes, words themselves, phrases, and sentences. The lexical semantics refers to the meaning of words and relationships among words. Phrasal or sentential semantics deals with the units larger than one word. So a phrase, a part, but something larger than just one word. So here we have the cute little cartoon, little boys popping a peek over here. I'm not cheating, I'm consulting. Yeah, teacher didn't go for it. There's power in language, but futility in semantics. Teacher didn't buy the consulting. If I have 12 tomatoes and take away 2, what is the difference? What difference does it make? Exactly, I don't like tomatoes either. Well, I'm not real fond of them. What are you in for this time? Semantics. So he was agreeing with her, but she's wanting the difference between 12 and minus 2, and he's addressing tomatoes. So, semantics, okay? We have compositional semantics, where we form rules, semantic rules, that build the meaning of a sentence based on the meaning of those words and how they combine. So, this is also known as truth conditional semantics, because the speaker's knowledge of truth conditions is central to understanding this. You've got to know what's accurate. If you know the meaning of a sentence, you can determine under what conditions it is true or false. You don't need to know whether or not a sentence is true or false to understand it. So knowing the meaning of a sentence means knowing under what circumstances it would be true or false. Now that may sound all kind of gobbledygook right now, but most, notice it says most again, sentences are true or false depending on the situation. Some sentences are always true, and those are referred to as tautologies. We have fun with those. And some are always false, the contradictions. So here we have our most famous guy in the world. I don't always use tautology, but when I do, I use tautology. Well, yeah, that's always true, because he just reinforced himself. Listen up. The first rule of Tautology Club is the first rule of Tautology Club. Yeah, it's the first rule. Duh. So, it's always true. No problem. Then we have entailment, which I see that word and I think about adding a tail on a mermaid that lost one, and related notions, and I've got the image in my head of the old notions counter at old general stores where they had notions, but that's not what we're talking about. So with entailment, one sentence entails another. If whenever the first sentence is true, the second one must also be true. So if I can say Jack swims beautifully, well, if that sentence is true, then Jack swims must also be true, because otherwise he couldn't swim beautifully. The thing is, Jack swims does not entail Jack swims beautifully, because Jack may make a bloody mess of it out there in the water, splashing around and practically drowning before he gets across the pool. So this one has entailment, This one does not. When two sentences entail each other, they're synonymous or paraphrases. We have Jack postponed the meeting, which is the same thing as Jack put off the meeting. We're saying something that's similar. We have the same meaning. We have contradictions. Jack is alive or Jack is dead. He can't be both. So one is going to contradict the other. Our semantic knowledge here also tells us when words or phrases have more than one meaning. We already dealt with the ambiguity in that stupid boy and the man with the telescope. We'll never get away from him, I tell you. So we have different structures that we can apply to this. We have lexical ambiguity, where we have multiple meanings corresponding to the same word or phrase. This will make you smart. Now I want you to stop and think about that sentence. Are you going to drink a magic potion that will make you smart? Is the doctor going to give you a shot and the shot will make you smart? It's going to hurt, okay? This is kind of like the boy and the man and the telescope. Sherlock saw the man. Sherlock saw the man using binoculars. So it's the same concept there. With our compositional semantics, we're trying to account for the speaker's knowledge of truth. Now we're dealing with the speaker. What does the speaker know of truth, entailment, and ambiguity? We have to assume that grammar has certain semantic rules for how to combine those words into meaningful, not just gobbledygook, phrases and structures, sentences. So the principle of compositionality, you compose, composition, compositionality, asserts that the meaning of an expression is composed of the meaning of its parts and how the parts are combined structurally. Kind of like with a music composition. How do the violins go together in the composition with the brass section? Or how does the piano come in and add to the structural components to all work together for one composition? Okay? Now, here we have semantic rule 1. If the meaning of the noun phrase, here we have Jack, an individual, is a member of the meaning of the verb phrase, set of individuals, then the sentence is true, otherwise it is false. So, Jack refers to an individual named Jack. Okay. Swims refers to the set of individuals that swim. Not all individuals swim, but Jack does. So if Jack is among those people who are capable of swimming, then the sentence is true. Okay? Jack can't swim, it's not true. So if we have Jack and Laura and kissed, Jack plus the past tense of kiss and Laura. Okay? Semantic rules. Pair of individuals and one of them kissed the other one. Semantic rule 2. We have a set of individuals. So X is the first member of any pair in the meaning of the V, the verb, whose second member is a meaning of the noun phrase. So if the noun phrase Jack is among the set of people who kiss Laura, I don't know how many people kiss Laura. Laura's in the verb phrase, she's getting the action of the verb, the kiss, then the sentence is true. We don't know how many people are kissing her. So now, an anomalous sentence. Kind of think of Jabberwocky, okay? We have things that can be grammatically correct and make no sense. I've got an adjective and an adjective telling about a noun, and noun is followed by a verb, the verb is followed by an adverb, and this makes no sense. Colorless green ideas sleep furiously. Say what? Somebody's smoking something good. So in terms of syntax, noun, verb, all that, it's okay, but it doesn't make sense. Sometimes we have nonsense words. He took his vorpal sword in hand. Vorpal? What the heck does vorpal mean? I don't know what's going on here. So it's uninterpretable. Now, Calvin and Hobbes, this little guy was one of my favorites for years. And he starts off, and he did this a lot. I like to verb words. What? I take nouns and adjectives and use them as verbs. Remember when access was a thing? Now it's something you do. It got verbed. Actually, he's correct. That has happened with a lot of words. Verbing weirds the language. So he turned the word weird into a verb. And his nice little tiger friend says, maybe we can eventually make language a complete impediment to understanding. I fear sometimes that has happened. But we have had words go through transformations in the language and take on other forms. Well, Calvin likes to do that. Metaphors. A metaphor and a simile are very much alike. With a metaphor, you say one thing is another. With a simile, you say one thing is like or as another. Muhammad Ali was famous for these: float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. But with a metaphor, we're making a point of a concept. He is a bear in the morning until he's had his coffee. Well, obviously, he is not a furry mammal that lives out in the woods until we pour caffeine down his throat. But we're making a conceptual comparison. So we have to understand the individual words and kind of what's going on. So if you have the phrase, time is money, well, if you're getting paid per hour and you may have a job that pays you a certain amount of money per hour, yes, time is money. Now, time itself is not composed of physical paper bills and copper or silver, we wish they were silver, coins that are lying on the table, but it's the concept. Now, I like this little guy. He looks a lot like a shmoo that used to be on an old comic series, cartoon. The knife metaphor for humor seems pretty well established, I think. What with people having a sharp wit and making cutting comments, I just wish some people would use a fine blade rather than a butcher's knife sometime. Oh man, I think I got stuck in my own metaphor, it's so long. He's got a point. Okay? Now, the idiomatic phrases. You can't really predict some stuff there, just on the individual words. So, drop the ball. Did Joe drop the ball physically, drop the football? Put his foot in his mouth. Did the baby put his foot in his mouth? Hit it off. Did he hit the off switch? Or maybe did Joe drop the ball on the project, meaning that he just kind of gave up? Joe put his foot in his mouth, meaning that he said something really stupid. Or Joe and Susie hit it off, meaning they got along pretty good. So we can't look at the phrase itself. Unfortunately, these things are not necessarily translatable. If you have watched NCIS, the TV series, back when Ziva was on the show, she, of course, spoke English as a second language, and some of the idioms were challenging to her as written in the script. So our phrase, kick the bucket, in another language means to stretch the leg, pull someone's leg maybe, but in this case an animal leg. So the idioms don't translate right across. We can say eating crow, and in the English language that means that we kind of have to eat our words. We have to acknowledge that we said something incorrect. We've been proven wrong. Someone who is not a native English speaker and is not aware of that might think that you're actually broasting, frying, baking crow in the oven and having it for dinner. Okay? So we've got some things going on here. We have the referent, the real world object designated by a word. Jack. Jack may be just Jack. Jack may be the happy swimmer. Or Jack may be my friend. Or Jack may be that guy. And I can say Jack swims, or I can say my friend swims, or I can say that guy swims. But when I have a noun phrase that doesn't refer to a specific person, like no baby swims, it's not going to make much sense. When we add other phrases in, things kind of have more meaning. Jack and the happy swimmer may be the same thing, so that adds the idea that, hey, the happy swimmer is happy. Jack, the happy swimmer, is happy. Okay? A little silly, but still. Going back in administration, we have since. The element of meaning separate from reference and more enduring, the manner in which the expression presents the reference. Now, we can refer to people in many different ways, and you can refer to yourself in many different ways. You may be a daughter, a son. You might be an aunt or an uncle. You might be a mother or father. You might be a cousin. You might be a niece or a nephew. So one person has many roles. So you yourself might be your parents' child, but also the employee at, say, Costco. And if you are, more power to you. That place is a great place to work with great benefits and all that. But we can refer to people using different words. Okay? Unicorn has a sense, but no reference. I mean, it's just, we're saying unicorn. Unabomber and Ted Kaczynski, yeah, we know who we're talking about there, okay? They are co-referential here. We're talking about the same person, so it has reference, but no sense, okay? With synonyms, means, just take the first part, the S. Synonym, a word that means the same thing or real close. Antonyms, words that mean the opposite. Grab your thesaurus, you have synonyms and antonyms. You also have a thesaurus function on the word program, and I apologize for my loud neighbor bursting in there yelling at his dog. At least he didn't cuss him out this time. Sorry for that. Some people say there are no two words with exactly the same meaning. Since we have imported many words into our language, we come pretty close, but they may have a little different. Spouse and wife are real close, but spouse and husband can also be real close. You know, they're not exactly the same. Apathetic and indifferent are pretty close. Sofa, couch. Hey, throw in Davenport there. They're pretty much the same, but they may change from time frames. Now, Norman invasion in 1066, and if you are an English major or studying history or anything, that year is something you just carve into your heart. The English language changed. So French words with a Latin origin came into the language, and that's why we have so many similar words, because we had the English word, and then we grabbed the French word and we brought it on in. So we may have had the basic word send. Well, transmit means the same thing. We just grabbed that word in 1066. Okay? So synonym, a word used in place of the one you can't spell. I like that definition. Okay? Antonyms, as I said, are opposite in meaning. You have complementary antonyms that pretty much take the same idea. Alive versus dead, present versus absent, awake versus asleep. Alive, not dead, dead, not alive. Okay, pretty basic there. Gradable pairs have no absolute scale. Big and small. What is big to me, again, I apologize for my loud, crude neighbor. What is big to... And I do wish CPS would step in, or Animal Protective Services. Sorry about that. Gradable pairs. Big, small, hot, cold, fast, slow. I was driving the car fast. Well, how fast were you driving? Because believe me, what I think is fast is not what my son thinks is fast. Okay? I paid a lot of money for that. How much is a lot of money to you? It may vary. A lot of money to me could be 20 bucks. Bill Gates, he's not going to bend over to pick up a $20 bill. It's not worth his time. Anyway, some pairs of gradable antonyms contain a marked and an unmarked term, with the unmarked term being the one used in question of degree. How high is the mountain? Because we're thinking in terms of height, not how low is the mountain, because we're not going down low with the mountain. We might with a valley. How low is the valley? Now, we've got some interesting words that we can put together. Bitter and sweet. They mean the opposite, but do we have the word bittersweet? We go up or we go down. We have something that's the worst, or we have something that's the best. We have something big, we have something small. But bittersweet memories. Yeah. Now, relational antonyms. They show symmetry. If I give something, then that means somebody else is going to receive it. If I buy something, someone else has to sell it. If I am an employer, that means I have to have an employee. Those have to go together. Now the word dust, please realize, as far as I'm concerned, dust is a noun and it is a protective coverant on my furniture. Okay? You can tell if somebody's been snooping around if the dust has been rearranged. But most people will look at dust as a verb to remove the dust, which is a noun, or you might dust, scatter small particles, you might dust a cake with confectioner's sugar, or you might dust it with some glitter. So they're their own antonyms, to remove it or to scatter it. It's interesting. The homonyms, oh Lord, these are going to drive you crazy. They're also called homophones, words that have different meanings but are pronounced the same. Bear. Are we talking about the big furry mammal? Are we talking about something that is, kind of naked? Your bare arm? Your unclothed arm? Homographs are words that are spelled the same. Now, we may have a bear in the woods, or you might have to bear your troubles. A dove may be sitting in the tree, but one of the guys at summer camp dove, hey, spelled the same, not necessarily pronounced, dove into the water. And that is the case with the heteronyms. Spelled the same, pronounced differently. So we know dove and dove, but bear, we don't know. Okay. Polysemous words have multiple meanings, oh my Lord. A diamond, hey, are you wearing a diamond on your hand? Or are we talking about the shape of a diamond if you're in geometry? Or are we talking about a baseball field? Okay, with hyponyms, we have a relationship. We have a general term, in this case flower, and specific examples. So a flower is the general term. The specific examples, rose, iris, daisy, poppy, those are kinds of a flower, so they are hyponyms. The semantic features, these are properties that are part of word meaning, and those show that we have some knowledge about this. So, as an example, big, we know that that deals with size. We know that red deals with color, so they cannot be antonyms. They don't deal with each other. Assassin, well, assassins are humans who kill important people. So we understand that concept when we're looking at that word. Now, speech errors, slips of the tongue. We accidentally say something because the words are close. We do this all the time. It doesn't mean anybody's stupid or losing their minds. It's just our brains are very, very busy. So what we meant to say was bridge of the nose, accidentally say bridge of the neck. When my gums bled, when my tongue's bled. Well, tongue is real close to the gum, so, you know. He came too late, he came too early. We're still on the time concept. Mary was young, Mary was early. These are sharing properties, but they're not saying the same thing, okay? Now, with classifiers, we have grammatical morphemes that indicate the semantic class of the noun. Swahili has one set of singular and plural markers for nouns that don't have a semantic feature, or the semantic feature human, and another set for those that don't. So it varies. In English, we're usually dealing with something. Can something be a count noun, where you can count it and make it plural, or a mass, where it's not something you're going to count? You don't count milk. Now, you might say I have 2 gallons of milk, but then you're counting the gallons, okay? And then what kind of gallons of milk? Count nouns, I have 2 dogs, I have 1 dog, I have 5 dogs, I have 10 potatoes. So I can make potatoes plural. Mass nouns, rice. Are you going to sit there and count every grain of rice? You're not going to say, I have a rice, I have 2 rices. That would be silly. We're going to judge it by mass. I have 2 cups of rice. I have a half a cup of water. I don't have waters. I don't have rices. Okay? Now, we also have some other features. Darken includes the semantic feature cause, as does kill and uglify. Uglify? Break can be analyzed with a cause to become broken, and verbs can have syntactic consequences. Now, just keep all of this stuff in your brain. So verbs can describe events, eventives, or states, statives, and these verbs affect the possible sentence structures. So, we get back to the active and passive. Eventive sentences sound good when passivized. Put in the progressive, used as imperatives. Imperatives are commands and with certain adverbs. So, oysters were eaten by John. That's a passive. John is eating oysters. That's a progressive. John deliberately ate oysters. Well, we threw in an adverb. Eat oysters! That's a command. That's an imperative. John deliberately liked oysters. Sounds a little funny. Like oysters! Again, that's a command, but a kind of weird one. Oysters were liked by John? Again, kind of weird. Different kinds of verbs take a different number of noun phrases as arguments, where each verb takes a subject, and we have those transitive and intransitive. Intransitive verbs take no other argument. I sleep, you sleep, he sleeps. Transitive verbs have to have an object. They have to have the additional argument, the object. I find, or I found. I found a puppy. Okay, I have to say what I found. Ditransitive verbs, such as give, take 2 additional arguments. So if you give something, who are you giving it to? Okay? So I gave Joe, what did I give Joe? I gave Joe a ball. I gave a ball to Joe, if I want to use a prepositional phrase. Now, the verb will determine the semantic properties. So some things are going to require human objects, although, you know, puppies sleep. And drink requires something liquid, just like take a bite of something requires something solid. Okay? So thematic roles express the relation between the arguments of the verbs. So thematic roles. The agent, this is the subject who does it. the theme, the undergoer of the action. Sounds like a movie plot. The goal is the endpoint of a change, the source where everything originates in terms of action, the instrument, the means used, and the experiencer, the one receiving the sensory input. Now that all sounds really complicated, but it goes together. The agent here, the dog, bit what? The stick. The stick was bitten by the dog. Here's that passive voice. So the stick is now the theme. Well, it was here too. It just started now. Was bitten. The agent is the one doing the action. Okay? Pragmatics is concerned with how we understand things in context, and we can take things out of context very easily. So with linguistic context, the discourse that precedes the phrase, the situational context, everything non-linguistic in the environment, what's going on, what's not being said. So here we have dices. Person, I, you, she, that man, those girls. So who is present? Who is being discussed? Are we pointing to somebody? Am I saying that man and pointing at him? Or am I saying you, which means I'm talking to somebody? So who's there with me? The time. When was it said? Yesterday I saw a frog. Okay? Yonder mountain's kind of a little odd, but still, where did we say it? Or what is being said about yonder mountains? In yonder mountains I found gold, okay? I'm discussing the yonder mountains. Now, pronouns. Please remember, pronouns have to have an antecedent, a noun that came before them that explains what they are. And we're pretty bad about we make sentences when we don't have a clear antecedent. We throw they around all the time. They said I can't get my money back. Well, who is they? They gave me a ticket. It did not take a group of people to give you a parking ticket. Okay? Who gave you the ticket? The police officer. Okay. So we have to have an antecedent, something that came before. Reflexive pronouns, that depends on the antecedent. It's got to be in the same clause. So John bit himself, and my poodle is having issue with that one. Himself left. Himself sounds weird unless you're watching an episode of Outlander and the characters are referring to Jamie Fraser as himself. Rather common in Scottish presentations of dialogue, referring to somebody important. John said that the girl bit himself is not going to make sense. John said that the girl bit him would make sense. John said that the girl bit herself. That would make sense. So it's going to depend. I hit myself. I had the hammer and I hit my own thumb. I hit myself. I am talking to myself. Very often, it seems. Regular pronouns can't refer to an antecedent in the same clause. So if I say John knows him, I can't be referencing John. John can't know himself, so to speak. John knows that he is a genius. Well, here we have a very ambiguous he. Does John know that he himself is a genius? Or does John know that his friend Jack is a genius? I don't know. It's not clear. Now, if we make an implication, okay? If we are inferring something, we're not directly answering the question. We're hedging a wee bit. So Sue asked, does Mary have a boyfriend? She's been driving to Santa Barbara every weekend. Well, Bill is kind of saying yes, because if she didn't have a boyfriend, why would she be driving to Santa Barbara every weekend? So he is implying she's got a boyfriend in Santa Barbara without actually saying yes. Okay? It's a way of not answering the question. Okay? Now, the maxims of conversation. These are conversational conventions that govern discourse. Quality, quantity, relation, and manner. truth, information, relevance, and clarity. Sometimes we're not real good on that clarity aspect. So if somebody says it's cold in here, and the other person is standing by the open window, it says the listener can assume the speaker is violating the maxim of relevance, or can assume that the utterance is relevant because the speaker would like the window closed. So if you were ever told by one of your parents, hey, your mom wasn't a window maker, then your dad is implying that you need to move from in front of the television. Is he saying it straight out? No, he isn't. He is implying it like crazy. It's cold in here, and you are standing by the thermostat or by the open window or by the open door. That person wants you to shut the open window or the open door or maybe adjust the thermostat. Should they just come out and say it? Yes, of course they should, but we don't do that. Now, speech acts. We have performative verbs. They accomplish an action when they are uttered. I dare you. Well, the mere act of saying this is daring the person. I bet you can't do this. I bet you can't jump across that puddle. I nominate Bill Smith as president of the Art Guild. I'm performing an act right when I say that verb. And these verbs usually sound good when you add I hereby nominate, I hereby challenge you. Makes it sound very impressive and lawyer-like. So that was the end of chapter 4, and next on your agenda will be chapter 5.